Hello everyone, Shane Vance, here. I've been thinking, there have been a top 5 and/or top 10 list of nearly every popular cartoon show, whether those lists are about episodes they like, dislike, find underrated, or belong in a horror story. However, I'd like to point out that there are episodes that belong in their own category, boring. Yep, episodes of a cartoon that aren't bad, but not all that good either. Episodes that you can find down the middle and enjoy them if you like, but otherwise forget about because they add next to nothing in terms of how they tell a story. And I'm here today to give out such a ranking of episodes from one of the most talked about cartoons in TV history, My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. Now, a lot of you all probably know me as a brony, since I created a whole bunch of MLP-related videos like MLP parodies of recent Disney shows. But now, I am making my first verbal ranking of MLP episodes. And I will be talking about episodes that you might consider watching if you're not in the mood for anything grandiose or anything that will make you annoyed at best, just episodes that you wouldn't write home about, but at the same time, consider to be passable at best. So, without further delay, here is my top 5 most boring episodes of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic.
Boring!
Going to seed. When another apple bucking season is about to arrive, Apple Bloom is told the story of the Great Seedling, a seemingly mythical creature that is said to bestow beauty to a garden of the one who catches it. Intrigued by the tale, Apple Bloom starts to prioritize catching the creature rather than help with the harvest, much to the dismay of Applejack. This episode came out in the first half of the last season, and truth be told, I liked that half because all of the episodes were tolerable at best or mediocre at worst. Going to Seed is unfortunately in the latter category, because while I won't say it's one of the show's absolute worst episodes, I can't say that it's anything remotely great either. The episode is your typical catch Bigfoot plot, and I think it's handled in a way that's, well, passable at best. For the most part, the episode only barely puts AJ in the wrong for caring more about the harvest and her responsibilities around the farm rather than letting Apple Bloom obsess with catching a fairy tale creature. I say barely because she tells Apple Bloom a story of how when she was younger, she was also obsessed with finding the Great Seedling, but it caused her to miss helping her family out with the harvest. What is Apple Bloom's response to this?
I'm sorry that happened, Applejack, but it won't if you and me set traps together like you promised. Plus, we'll get them done twice as fast and won't miss out on any of the harvest.
I bet many people were kind of expecting this moment to be about Apple Bloom deciding to stop obsessing with hunting the Great Seedling and focusing on the harvest. This episode could easily have been written wrong in at least 2 ways, like how Apple Bloom wanting to catch a seemingly mythological creature ends up alienating her from her family, or how Applejack could easily have been given grief for not letting Apple Bloom enjoy her childhood. However, I appreciate that the episode does sort of see both sides of the coin. Despite this though, I do still find this episode to be very mundane because AJ and Apple Bloom's goals take up at least a portion of the episode, with most scenes involving Applejack getting annoyed at Apple Bloom's focus on catching the seedling, which kind of drags down the episode. What keeps Going to Seed from getting any lower is the concept of the Great Seedling itself, because it does sound like a very interesting creature. Plus, the signs that the Great Seedling may very well be real does sort of add in some curiosity, alongside with how Applejack and Apple Bloom see a shadow of what seems to be the Great Seedling does add into that curiosity. However, all that curiosity pales in comparison to how much of a tedious vibe the episode gives out. Plus, the ending where it's revealed that all of these events were actually caused by Big Macintosh, since he was sleepwalking due to being exhausted with having to do all of the work himself, is such a mediocre punchline since he's been acting very sleep-deprived throughout the whole episode that you can kind of see this joke coming a mile away.
You okay, Big Mac?
Nope. Going to Seed does have some things going for it, like its compromising of both conflicts. The moral about having fun and letting a kid be a kid is kind of sweet, and it was nice seeing Bright Mac and Pear Butter again, all of which makes it more watchable compared to the other episodes down on the list. But given how boring the episode is, that's not really saying much.
Boring!
Tradia. In this episode, the main 6 head to a trader's exchange in Rainbow Falls, where they each go through some misadventure in order to find out what they want to trade for. Twilight wants to sell old books from her library, but Pinkie Pie gets in the way by trying to oversell the value that the books have. Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy go through trade after trade to acquire a first edition copy of the first Daring Do book from a vendor who agrees to trade it if they manage to get a creature called an Orthros, and Applejack and Rarity want to acquire vintage items from the trade and plan to pull their resources together. But they can't really agree on what to trade for. An old rusty cooking pot that AJ wants, or a vintage brochure that Rarity wants, despite having one that's similar in appearance. To start things off here, you might be asking why I find this episode to be boring. Well, for one thing, all of the stories in this episode are barely entertaining. For example, Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash's story, which is sort of the de facto A-plot, is kind of repetitive as it mostly features the two going through a long list of trades, and while this leads to some rather amusing payoffs...
Oh, stand filled with Discord-shaped lamps? Seriously? They really do have everything at the Traders Exchange.
It also leads to some obstacles that feel like filler, like pointless conversations with the pony vendors, running the various trade stands, one of whom is handicapped and is actually played by a real-life handicapped person via the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And things don't pick up when they finally receive the Orthros, because the Daring Do vendor has, at the last minute, rescinded her want of it, due to the Orthros being untrained. And this causes Rainbow Dash to basically sell Fluttershy into slavery to domesticate the Orthros in her desperation to receive the book, which, sorry to sound like a jerk here, I can't really take seriously because I've been worn down by the repetitive mundanity of this plot.
Oh no! What did I do?
The other plots didn't really sell me either, like how Pinkie Pie takes over Twilight trading her books without considering Twilight's feelings, which just frustrates me. And what's even more frustrating is that Twilight soon decides not to sell her books due to them holding memories of her and her friends.
I may not ever need to read these again, but that doesn't mean they don't have value. I realize that now.
Gee, Twilight, that's nice and all. Too bad T-Rex destroyed those memories a few episodes down the line. AJ and Rarity's plot, I find it to be the most forgettable of the three because it's just a rehash of Looking Before You Sleep from Season 1. Only I can tolerate it better by comparison.
You take our stash.
How dare you let me get what I want? What kind of friend do you think I am? You're going to get what you want.
No, you are.
No, you are.
Anyway, the resolution at the end feels kind of sappy, but probably the sappiest this show could hope to amount to. And we get the generic, friends are better than material possessions, moral that we've heard in a whole bunch of other media. As a whole, Trade Ya is an episode that did have some potential for a comedic shopping spree kind of plot, but the execution makes it a bit of a chore to sit through. I remember when the episode first aired nearly a decade ago. I ended up missing a majority of it through various reasons and only got to see it when it was a little past the halfway mark and witnessed the end of it. Before I watched the full episode online a few hours earlier, when me and my family went to a barbecue at my aunt's house. I guess you could say I wasn't missing out on much due to how I feel about the episode.
Boring!
Apple Family Reunion. In this episode, the Apples are hosting a family reunion with all of their relatives across Equestria, coming to visit, and Applejack feels pressured to make sure that this reunion will be the best one of all. However, in her determination, she ends up exhausting her relatives with many activities that she planned, which ironically makes the relatives have a less than ideal time at the reunion. What makes this episode so boring? Well, I found that the second half of this episode shares the same problems as Trade Ya, as it's all about AJ forcing her relatives to do some activities without them getting a chance to chat with each other first, and Apple Bloom and her cousin Babs Seed, who appeared in a previous episode, end up simultaneously trying to catch up with each other while doing the activities, which, to reiterate, like Trade Ya, makes the episode very repetitive.
Great!
You all right?
So dizzy.
Even when the episode tries to add in some tension when the family goes on a hayride that destroys the family barn, it just feels more like an excuse for slapstick comedy. The only memorable thing about this episode is the song, Raise This Barn, that happens at the end, because it's this upbeat and catchy country ditty that can have you tapping your feet every time you hear it.
Look at us, we're family, working together thankfully. We apples, we are proud to say, stick together the pony way.
Other than that, though, I can't really say that this episode stands out in any capacity.
Boring!
Forever Philly. When Rarity begins to miss hanging out with Sweetie Belle, she decides to plan a day with the two of them, doing whatever activities Sweetie Belle used to find fun, but has outgrown, much to Sweetie Belle's frustration. And this forces Apple Bloom and Scootaloo to solve a problem with a friend of theirs without Sweetie Belle's help. For starters, let me just say that this episode has the most generic plot imaginable, where a parent babies their child just to recapture the charm and love of when they were younger. This isn't even the first time it happened, as the Season 4 episode, Some Pony to Watch Over Me, had a similar plot point. For this episode, most of it is just Rarity taking Sweetie Belle to do some childlike things, and Sweetie Belle having anything but a good time, which, like Apple Family Reunion and Trade Ya, gives off a repetitive vibe to the episode.
And pose!
The B story, where Apple Bloom and Scootaloo help their friend Whippoorwill with her pet dog, is also nothing special, because the problem is obvious from the start. Her dog has grown up, but she still treats it as if he was young, which is a pretty on-the-nose juxtaposition of Rarity and Sweetie Belle's plot. It's like the writers didn't even bother to add in some creative twist to throw the audience for a loop, and just decided to make the comparison as obvious as possible.
He's not just bigger, he's older too. You don't still play with the same toys from when you were a fool, do you? Oh, this squeaker is a little small for him now.
What keeps this episode from getting lower is that some of the scenes are really funny. Like Sweetie Belle's cringy and annoyed reactions to Rarity's antics can be a little amusing to watch.
It's funny because it's true.
Other than that, though, Forever Philly is hardly anything special, as we get the generic "let your child grow up" message being told at the end. This episode probably would have worked better as a Season 1 episode, but even then, it would still be boring.
Boring!
Applejack's day off. Rarity is hoping to spend time with Applejack at the spa, but Applejack is swamped with farm responsibilities that she can't find any time to do so. Twilight and Spike offer to do AJ's chores while she unwinds at the salon. However, the salon ends up suffering through maintenance issues, which makes AJ's time off more time-consuming when she tries to find the problem. Now, why is this episode number 1 on my list? Well, to put it into words, this is the cartoon episode of Mowing the Lawn, the most mundane, dull, and boring activity known to man. It is about Applejack and Rarity wanting to take a relaxing day at their local salon, but they end up getting stuck on account of how the salon has a leaky pipe, which takes up a majority of the episode's second half.
Wonderful. Now that we've solved the great steam mystery, we can finally get back to our significantly less than an hour of relaxation.
Also, the episode was pretty misleading by putting Twilight and Spike in the mix by having them do AJ's farm work for her, which hints that there might be a subplot. However, there is no subplot, and Twilight and Spike only appear in the beginning and end of the episode, and I guess for a joke, it turns out they couldn't even get past the first thing to do on the list. Why, you ask? Because Applejack, apparently, has been engrossed in a routine she does that is no longer effective for her farm work. And guess what AJ says during all of this?
You can't just stick to the same old way of doing things and expect them to get better. I mean, thinking you can is just plumb ridiculous, right?
Hypocritical much? Anyway, now you get my beef with this episode. It's so mundane that you'd almost rather watch paint dry. It could have been about Applejack learning to put aside her workaholic nature. While that could have been a rehash of Applebuck season, I would have preferred that to this 22-minute dull fest. Thank you all for watching. I'm Shane Vance, and I'll see you later.